Well, Heather, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today. I'm sure everyone knows I love gut health. It's my favorite thing, and you are such an expert. I'm excited to talk to you about gut health, and we're going to talk specifically today about stress and the impact that stress has on our gut, because I think that a lot of people don't really realize how big of an impact it really does have. So, before we jump into that, would you mind telling us just what interested you in gut health? Like, why did you really get started and really want to? You provide a lot of educational information. Why was this kind of your area of expertise, or why has it become that?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat all things stress and gut health. Really, the reason that I got into this was because of my own gut health journey. I struggled with my own constipation, bloating, etc., for about 20 years, and finally decided, okay, I'm going to go to school to figure out what the doctors can't. And graduated school, still was constipated and bloated, had no idea how to help myself. And it really wasn't until I got into more of the functional medicine world, recognizing just how the body all works together, that it all finally clicked for me that all the things that I was doing in the name of, quote unquote, health were actually damaging my gut more than they were helping me. So the restrictive diets, the over exercising, the lack of sleep, the like burning the candle at both ends, all of that was just destroying my gut. And so although I would execute, any protocol or, low FODMAP or whatever, the next coolest thing was, although I would do that perfectly, I would still end up feeling the way that I was because I wasn't addressing the stress in my life.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we have so much in common because you basically just described my whole history as well. I had over 20 years of gut issues, like same thing, bloating, constipation, those are probably the biggest things. And you 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 think, like you said, you think you're doing all of the right things, and you're honestly, there's so much information out there. It is overwhelming and it can be confusing. And most of us, until I think it's getting a little bit better, but over the years, we really have just honed in on, traditional medicine, that approach. And, for most of us, it hasn't gotten us anywhere. And so I think it is important to, like you said, look at the body as a whole, take more of a functional approach. So I love that. Now, I have a question before we kind of dive into how stress really affects the gut. Was that a big issue for you? Because it was for me. I realize in hindsight, that was probably my biggest issue.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I am like your very typical type A overachiever and thought that that was like not a problem. Like this is just how I operate. And although I still am that way, I know how to balance my nervous system and prioritize rest and not be so stressed all the time. And yeah, just had no clue that even the thoughts that I was having, even just how I was living my life was affecting my gut. Everything that I was doing was like so opposite of now what I tell my clients to do.
Yes, I totally get that. I'm curious. Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yes, I love the Enneagram.
Okay, what number are you?
I'm a 3, and I was
Oh,
actually about to say I am a type A perfectionist Enneagram 3, and then I was like, I don't know if people are going to know what the Enneagram is. So
listen, I knew when you said all that, I was like, she's a 3. I'm a 3. So I was like, she's got to be a 3. I love it.
yep.
Oh my gosh. That is too funny. I love that. So I totally can relate to this and get this. And most people, or a lot of people, let's say, whether they're listening in, and doesn't matter what Enneagram number they are, we as women, we take on a lot of responsibility. Wear a lot of hats, have a lot of different roles. We're constantly taking care of other people. And so, like you said, a lot of times we're kind of burning the candle at both ends, and we don't take care of ourselves. And that, even though we think we're doing all the right things, we're doing good things, helping our family, other people, it really can take a toll on our bodies, so much that it can make us physically ill. And I think that that is just something that I'm excited to talk more about. I try to talk to my patients individually about, but there's just not enough awareness, especially in traditional medicine, around stress and the impact that it has on the body. So how about we kind of first start by talking about exactly, and I mean, you can get as sciencey as you want to or not. We have kind of a varied audience here. It is mostly women, probably mostly moms. And I know you're a mom. And so what does stress actually do to our gut specifically?
Yeah, so I like to explain it like your dog barking when someone knocks on the door, right? So we've all had the experience where, if everyone's a mom here, your baby is sleeping and someone comes and knocks on the door and your dog goes berserk and you're like equally as angry at the dog as you are at the person at the door. But that's what's going on in our body when we have stressors. Our body is thinking, oh, there is an alarm. I need to run as fast as I can or bark as loud as I can to get away from this stressor. And so anytime we have stressors in our life, whether that is stress about our job, stress about being in traffic, stress about a deadline we have, even stressors like under eating, not sleeping enough, exercising too much, like all of those are stressors on our body. And so if your body's on high alert, it's not worried about digesting the meal that you just ate before, the FedEx man came to your door. It's worried about chasing the proverbial bear, or barking in the sense of this analogy. So, anytime that we're having these stressors, our body is trying to decide, okay, what do I do with this energy? What state do I need to be operating from? And so if you're operating in a sympathetic state, which is your stress, fight or flight state, then it's not worried about digesting food. So the long-term effects of that can be you are not digesting food very well. You are not absorbing nutrients from the food that you're consuming. The food is sitting in your gut longer than it should. It's fermenting. It's causing lots of gas and dysbiosis down the road, which leads to you feeling constipated, bloated, brain fog, fatigue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so really it all kind of goes back to, I guess the simple way to put this is, in what state are you operating? Are you operating most of your life in the fight or flight, like constantly on a deadline, rushed, stressed state? Or are you operating in a parasympathetic state where you are resting and digesting? You're taking time, you're getting enough rest, you're not stressed all the time. Your brain is actually able to process emotions and thoughts, which then actually helps you with digesting your meal. You're able to sit down and chew and salivate, and your enzymes are working and your stomach acid is producing, and your gut is contracting and moving food through your gut efficiently, and it's not sitting there fermenting and overgrowing. And so I know you said this at the beginning. I would say probably for most of our clients, the root cause of their digestive issues is stress. And yes, that stress has now cascaded and caused dysbiosis and, digestive insufficiencies and, hypothyroidism or whatever it is. Like there are other root causes, but the root of the root is stress for most people.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that, the root of the root. I like that because I could not agree more. I'll just share this, and then I want to hear kind of some of the steps that you took, to heal your gut and to kind of get on the other side of it. I went through, all of the traditional, like I said, all of the traditional medical approach. And then I was doing all of the right things once I moved into kind of more of the functional approach, but I hadn't undergone any type of testing or anything at that point. So, I was doing, all of the diet, and I was exercising too much. I was sleeping, but I was still really, looking back, really stressed all of the time from different things that were going on in my life. But then I took a GI MAT test and I had 2 parasites, H. pylori, terrible dysbiosis, a non-existent immune system. And so I remember looking at that, thinking 2 things. I remember thinking, wow, I am so much sicker than I ever thought. Like, I from the outside, I look really healthy. I feel like I do all the right things, but it was like unbelievable. But then the second thought was, well, now I have some answers and things that I can actually work on to treat. So I did that. Everything got, I mean, I would say 80% better. But it really was not until I let go of this major stressor in my life that it was just like, whoa, like, I mean, it was just crazy to me just to think how much that's why I know personally how much stress really affects your gut. And it's kind of hard. I get it. You may experience this. It's kind of hard to relay this to clients, what a big issue stress is, because I was like this. We don't want to hear that. Like, let's not deal with that. Let's just deal with, we see this on paper. Let's just deal with this. This is the easier thing to deal with, because we live in a stressful world and we'll never be able to get rid of all of the stress. But there are things, like you said, we can do to help manage it, to deal with it, to be more in that parasympathetic, rest and digest state than in that sympathetic fight or flight state. So I can really relate to all of that. So maybe if, as we're giving some tips around, okay, well, somebody saying, okay, listening, thinking, well, I'm definitely stressed. I have all of these symptoms. Maybe my first step is to try and start working on this stress. So maybe if you want to start giving some tips around that, and then like what helped you, like kind of relate it to your journey a little bit, I think that's always helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, I can so relate to what you just said. Because that was the same for me. Like I took a GI map and I was like, whoa, like, on the outside looking into my friends, my family, whoever there, I was the pinnacle of health. I was the girl that was up at 6 a.m. running 6 miles and, working and doing all this stuff. Like my mom used to always joke, like I could get more accomplished before 8 a.m. than anyone else. And like, although that's still true, I do it in a much healthier way because I have a lot more balance in my life. Like just the way that I'm wired almost is to be stressed, which is not good. So honestly, the place that I had to start, and that I think a lot of our clients have to start, is the mindset about stress. Like it's one thing to talk about all the things you can do to manage stress, which I'll definitely talk about. But for me, like you said, like that was the last thing that I wanted to hear, because I just wanted, like, just get me better so I can get back to my life, doing the things that I want to do. And like, this is an inconvenience. But I really had to evaluate my mindset. Why do I feel the need to like be stressed all the time? Why do I feel the need to have to wake up early every single day? Why do I feel the need that I have to, whatever the action was, like X, Y, and Z? And what I realized was like this stress that I had, or like the way in which I was operating my life, was really just kind of like a mechanism of coping with like other stressors. And so it was kind of like adding fuel to the fire almost. I was stressed and then managing my stress with more stress. And I really had to unwire that mindset of, why am I doing this? Like, what is actually the end goal here? And if the end goal is to not be bloated, not be constipated, have more energy, sleep, et cetera, then what I'm doing is not helping with that. And so it was a slow process. I mean, it wasn't something that changed overnight. And I don't think it is for anyone, because like you said earlier too, we live in a stressed society. So it's almost like going against the cultural norm to be like, I'm resting and I'm sleeping, like I always love the example of someone asks you how you're doing, and the common response is, "Oh, I'm good. I'm busy." Versus, "Oh, I'm doing great. I'm sleeping 7 hours a night. I'm having time in nature. Like I'm
Right.
eating well-balanced meals." Like if you actually said that to someone, they would look at you like you were crazy. But really, that's like what it should be, right? Like I have balance in my life. I feel refreshed when I wake up. I have time to sit down and eat a meal, et cetera, et cetera. So I think like stress management, like as far as where to start and what you can do, is trying to incorporate it into little bits of your day that so it doesn't overwhelm you. So for example, instead of thinking, okay, I need to work on my stress, I'm going to meditate for 45 minutes a day. If you're already stressed and you think you don't have time, you probably don't have time to meditate for 45 minutes a day. And meditation might be super intimidating to you if you've never done it before. So instead of thinking that, can you think, okay, when I start to get overwhelmed, I'm going to just get in the habit of taking a deep breath. And so then you're not necessarily carving out time for stress management, but you're starting by correlating, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed, I take a deep breath, and training your body to do that and naturally calm itself down. And then you can build on from there. So maybe instead of going for a 6-mile run every day, you go on a walk, or you do yoga, or you sleep in, or whatever you need to do. Like whatever your body's kind of asking you for, which sometimes people don't even know what their body's asking them for, and that can be definitely a hard thing as well. But just starting slow, really, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is instead of overwhelming yourself with like another checklist item to do, tuning into, okay, what do I actually need to do and what do I not need to do, and how can I slow down? How can I train my body to cope with stress just in the day-to-day by taking a deep breath, going outside and getting some fresh air, laughing, calling a friend, managing stress by even just balancing blood sugar and eating balanced meals throughout the day. There's so many different ways in which our body needs care in that department. So it can definitely be something that you can integrate slowly.
Yes, I couldn't agree with that more. I actually jotted down a couple of notes as you were talking. So I think, as first steps, one thing that you said stuck out to me, which I agree with, is to be in tune with your body, because I think so many people, and I mean, this is something that I'm constantly working on, so many people are not in tune with their body. They don't really even know what that means. They don't slow down long enough to even think, well, what do I need right now? What would help me? I feel stressed, kind of identifying, being aware, identifying what's going on, how you feel, and then what are some steps that you can take to maybe get out of that state. So I think that's really important. The other thing that you said that I find that people really want, and I get it, I was just like this is not an overnight process. It probably took, years of being in this state to get where you are, and, to have the symptoms and things like that that you have. So it's not going to be an overnight fix. There's not one thing, which I get it, everybody wants, but that's just not the way that things work. And then the other thing that I noticed that I did, and maybe this resonates with you, I'm not sure, but I would always kind of push down any like stress or like emotions, and then just work. Like I would just tune it out. Like, I don't want to deal with this. And so working made me feel good and feel accomplished. And so I would just continue to do that all the time. And then I got to a point where I was like, realized all of that had built up to a point where it was like, okay, I have to do something about this. It's really like killing me, the stress. I mean, the effects that it's having on my body. And then lastly, I thought this was so interesting that you said maybe some of the things that you're doing, like you want to de-stress. So maybe you think, oh, meditation sounds good. It should be helpful. But to me, my personality, like the thought of meditation is stressful. So it's like, it's helpful, but then the thought of doing it, I was just like, oh, this stresses me out. I can't sit here for even 5 minutes without my thoughts just going and run. And so the whole time I would feel, so that is something that I still work on and want to get better at. But just, again, I think awareness, you've heard, probably most of us have heard, awareness is the key to transformation. And I do think that is where it starts, being aware of this. And so one thing that I do a lot now is, I think, okay, I still have a list of things that I need to do throughout the day, which, a lot of us make lists. but I'm not attached to that list. I don't think, oh, I've failed today if I haven't completed that. And I just think, you know what? I'm going to do the most important things. Everything else is a bonus and it's not going anywhere. It'll be there tomorrow, And so I just kind of tried to let go of, really, it's the expectations a lot of times we put on ourselves to, I have to do this, I have to do that. So I think for me, that has been helpful. I would like to know, because I did the whole over exercising thing for years and years and years. I would like to know how you think that really affected you and what you encourage your clients to do in terms of movement and exercise.
Yeah, so I think for me, it was more of like an energy balance and lack of sleep. And so, I love to run. I've always been more of like an endurance athlete. I was a swimmer my whole life and in college. And so, like, that just came naturally to me. And it was a way that I was able to de-stress and kind of turn my mind off and be outside. And so it wasn't inherently a bad thing. It was just the other things that were surrounding it. So even though I didn't go to bed till midnight, I'm still going to wake up at 5:30 and run, because that's what I always do. Right. So I think it was, yes, I can still run, but I also need to make sure I'm getting enough sleep and make sure that I'm eating enough calories and make sure that I'm finding ways in which I can rest throughout the day. Because the reality was, at that time, and I don't run much anymore, but at that time, I would run and then I would just be exhausted for the rest of the day. And so clearly my body, just because it was so broken down trying to heal, and I was so stressed just in other areas of my life, it didn't have the energy to do that. And so at the end of the day, although it was relieving stress for the short period of time while I was running, it was creating more stress throughout the rest of the day because I was less productive. I couldn't focus. I was tired. And so it was taking me longer to do things. It had this cascading effect. And so really the mindset shift for me was, I'm actually going to be more productive by doing less. And maybe I'm running half the amount of miles that I normally did, or I'm going on a walk instead, or I'm doing something else, or I'm sleeping in. And so just finding a bit more balance instead of the rigidity that was attached to it. Because in my mind, I thought, oh, well, running is the only way that I'm going to be able to go to the bathroom, And so instead it was like, well, let's fix the underlying gut issue that's causing that to be the case. And then you don't have to be so attached to it. So anyways, that was kind of a long explanation there. But as far as what I recommend to our clients, really it's so individual, because some of our clients can do that and some can't. And, for a lot of our clients, it does look like Pilates and yoga and walking and a lot more low intensity exercise. And it is a mindset shift for them, because I think a lot of them, they come from kind of like the Orange Theory world of like, it has to be like super sweaty and I have to feel exhausted after. And that's not an inherently bad thing. Like, there is a time and a place for that, but shifting their mindset to realize, okay, right now by resting more, I'm actually going to heal faster. And then I can get back to finding a bit more balance and doing some of the things that I enjoy doing, just maybe not as much or to the extreme that I was.
Yes, I love that. And I agree. I think you're absolutely right in terms of, it has to be an individualized approach. And so you have to kind of look at the whole picture, which is, what we love about functional medicine, really looking at the individual as a whole and how these different factors are playing a role in what's going on in their body and in their life and health. For me, I did the whole, I would do HIIT. I was never a runner. That was something that I did not enjoy doing. But, I did love to do all the high intensity stuff. But I would notice, just like you said, in the afternoons, I was tired. Sometimes I would force myself to get up in the morning and do it. I'm really not a person who I like to get up early, but I like to get up and read and start my day off with like coffee, relax, like that kind of thing. I don't really like to get up and exercise. So, what I would say to people is I think sometimes we can get caught up in, well, this worked for this person and this worked for this person. And we try all the things and we never look at, well, I'm unique. I'm, my own person. I have bio individuality. Like, what will work for me? And really just trying to test different things out and figure things out. And just like you said, it's so interesting. I was so restrictive on diet and exercise. And now that I'm not, I still, eat healthy and I still exercise. I am probably in better health. I mean, I feel like the older that I get, the better health I'm in, the more energy I have, the better I feel. And, I don't feel that need to just almost like be in that like rat race all of the time. And so I just want people to know, if you're listening to this and if this resonates with you, that's definitely possible for you too. It just starts with, okay, let me be aware of what's going on in my body, and certainly getting to the root cause of your issues is important as well. So I want to transition to, you mentioned balancing your nervous system. So let's talk about what that means. What some tips you have around balancing your nervous system people can kind of take away right now and maybe even start doing today.
Yeah, so the nervous system, I mean, that's like, it's a whole nother beast, I guess, to attack, is because it's really like, at the end of the day, like how your system is trained to respond to stress. So, like anytime that a stressor approaches you, how do you respond? Do you respond by getting anxious and overwhelmed, or are you able to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, how am I going to solve this? How can you have more flow and ease in your life, I guess, is the easier way to say it. And I am by no means a nervous system specialist or anything like that, but it is a big piece for a lot of our clients, is that they don't know how to shift out of a stressed state. They just know how to operate in stress. Whether that was like a learned behavior from childhood or wherever, like it might just be what's normal to them. And so it's trying to kind of turn off the monkey mind, I guess, is a good way to describe it. Like, well, how is your mind thinking about things? And some of it too can be how you're thinking about things. Are you thinking negatively about things, positively about things? I think, mindset again kind of goes into that as well. Like, do you actually believe that your body has the ability to heal? Do you actually believe that it's possible for you to feel better? Do you actually believe that it's possible for you to not operate out of a state of stress? And so kind of getting into that piece as well. But as far as like where to start with the nervous system, I think the best place to start is with gratitude, because you can always find something that you're grateful for. And I know that sounds like really hokey and kind of cheesy, but if you look up like any of the neuroplasticity journals or anything related to the nervous system, a lot of the journaling exercises are gratitude based. So it's like, okay, list, today I accept that, fill in the blank. I am, giving kind of some positive affirmations, and then 3 things I'm grateful for, and making them super specific. So, not just saying I'm grateful for, my life, but like something like I am grateful for my daughter who did X, Y, and Z today. And like really kind of being present in those moments, I think, is another strategy as far as the nervous system is related. Like, instead of thinking about what happened in the past or is what's coming, like, okay, what am I experiencing in this moment, and how am I allowing my body to respond to that?
Yes, I love that. One thing that I have, I guess the more you kind of grow and evolve, you really, again, you start with awareness, but then your awareness just heightens even more and more, I think. And so one thing that I've noticed that I do a lot is I talk to myself. I mean, I'm not out loud, but I think we all kind of talk to ourselves probably in our head. but when something happens, I'll just, if I something happens and I get really stressed, then I'll just, say to myself, okay, stop for a minute. Let's think about this. What's the worst thing that could happen? Like if you don't do this, or if this happens, and then I can almost like talk myself through a situation to calm myself down and to not feel, anxious and then, and more stressed. But also I was, working with a coach. This was several years ago, and she said to me, we were talking about something, and she said, "Is that the truth?" And I said, "Well, no." And she said, "Okay, that's a lie. So when thoughts like this come into your head, tell yourself what the truth is. If it's a lie, say, well, this is actually the truth." And it does actually calm you down. And then just, again, it shifts your mindset, which is what, most of this is about. The mind is so powerful, really. And our subconscious thoughts, things that we don't even realize, drive most of our behavior every day. So if we can kind of start to recognize those type things and patterns, I think that really helps, or I've noticed that has helped me over time. So I think that those were great tips. So as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to say to listeners? If, let's say, we've got somebody listening who is like, I have all of these GI issues, or maybe it's not even, we know the gut affects our entire body. Maybe it's like constant brain fog, lack of focus. There could be a multitude of different symptoms. And they kind of are recognizing, okay, yeah, I have a lot of stress in my life. Just kind of wrap up some of your best tips of, okay, this is what I would suggest you to do.
So I would start by figuring out what you can say no to. So sometimes your best yes is a no. That was a really hard lesson for me to learn, and I still struggle with that. But every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And really, every time you're going to make a decision about something, map it out that way. So, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And sometimes the no that you're saying is to your health. So if I say yes to taking on this project, doing this commitment, whatever it might be, I'm saying no to sleep. I'm saying no to having time on the weekend to prep some food to have available. I'm saying no to whatever it is. And sometimes when you just like simply put it like that, it's like, well, of course, I'm not going to say yes to that. Like I don't have time to do that. And recognizing that like no is a full sentence. My husband has to remind me of that all the time. But you can just say no, and you don't have to have a reason, but like it's okay to take care of yourself. So that would be number one. Number two would be focus on getting sleep. Sleep is one of the best medicinal things that we can do for ourselves, is just sleep. So 7 to 8 hours, more if you need it. Some of our clients need 9 or 10 hours when they're kind of in the thick of it, just almost to like allow their body to kind of glue itself back together. So don't be hard on yourself if you feel like you need more than 8 hours of sleep. That's okay. And it won't be like that forever. So sleep. And then the other thing I think that is amazing for stress and our nervous system is sunshine. Get outside, try to get outside for 10 minutes in the morning, get some sun exposure. That can regulate your circadian rhythm. It helps with sleep. It helps with stress. Even just like hearing the birds and hearing the trees, like that can be so grounding for the nervous system and for stress. So start with the basics, then obviously you can add on all the complicated protocols and everything else. But if you're not doing the basics, then it's going to be really hard.
I love that, because to be honest, I went about that a little bit backwards. I didn't start with the basics. Started with all the other things and then wanted to ignore the basics and realize, no, you actually have to, that's kind of foundational. You really have to do those things. So I think that's excellent advice. So can you please tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can connect with you? And we'll, of course, put all of your links in the show notes.
You can connect with me on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Heather Finley. You can also connect with me on my new podcast that's launching soon. I don't think I told you that, but it's called Love Your Gut with Dr. Heather. It should be launching in the next couple of weeks, so I don't know when this is airing, but should be soon. And then my website is drheatherfinley.co.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for your podcast. That is super exciting. So definitely we'll put all of those links in the show notes. And thank you again. This is a great conversation. You have lots of wisdom. So definitely you guys go follow her on Instagram. She puts out awesome content. Thank you, Heather. This was great.
Thanks, Julie.